Well, good afternoon. How y'all doing this afternoon? Good. Okay. Well, I'm so glad to see so many of you here with us. I hope the first thing that I'd like to say is, aren't those some nice graphics there? Isn't that beautiful? It fits with a very nice metaphor that perhaps we'll all understand a little bit better. In light of what's happening in the world now, and it's been happening for a very long time, a lot of times our differences that make us unique are, fodder for misunderstandings and for conflict. So we hope that we can build some safety in the room today so that we can have some nice conversations, sort of begin the process of what needs to be a local, a regional, a global conversation, I hope, so that we can appreciate and understand each other better. So in that mind frame of trees and growth, we have nourishing growth, professional engagement in multicultural and diversity conversations. I have a wonderful group here. We've put some heart and soul into the conversation ourselves that we'd like to participate in. And I'd like to introduce myself, Dr. Kaloni Ruth Leilani Scanlon, and we have to my left here, Dr. Sheetal Shah. And we also have Dr. Liz Abrams, and we have Dr. Shaima El Sayed, and I'm a little nervous, so we'll be okay. And so here's some nice pictures of us, in case some of you are visual learners like myself, and we hope that even in the future too, if you have questions or need information, feel free to contact us, and our information is on the website, formerly under CAPS, and now we are morphing into counseling services, trying to destigmatize ourselves from, sometimes people are a little timid about having conversations about psychology, emotions, and feelings, but they still are very relevant to the conversations that we hope to start today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the warm welcome. So the purpose of our workshop here today is to engage with you, our colleagues, about how do we discuss multicultural issues and relationships to our students. So the goal is to talk about that. So we're going to address the multicultural issues that occur in our relationship with our students. We're going to explore our personal selves, our professional selves, and how they influence the world that we're in when we come to our students. Our expectations are that you engage, you participate, you reflect, you learn, you feel. We recognize that this looks different for everybody here, so do it to the best of your ability. We're really excited for you to just be here and to engage in the conversations. And before we do that, because we want to make this a safe and open space for us to be able to engage with each other, we want to just set some ground rules. I'm going to go over them pretty quickly. First, we want to make sure that you use I statements. So talk about yourself, don't make assumptions about other people or other groups. Maintain confidentiality. So don't talk about the things that maybe your colleagues talked about in here outside of here. Try to be open to your responses, to your reflections, to your feelings. Try to be curious. So allow yourself to ask questions, allow yourself to be curious with your colleagues. Try to be brave, take an extra step forward. Please ask questions if you don't understand something. We want to make sure that we can stop and pause and kind of put a hook in a concept or a question that we have. Step up, step down, which means if you're typically someone who likes to sit back, we ask you to kind of sit forward a little bit and engage a little bit more. If you're someone who likes to take a step, to engage a lot, we ask you to take a step back and just try something different in terms of listening. We encourage you to engage in a dialogue rather than a debate. So some of these conversations might be difficult to have, so wanting you to do that as well. So essentially, we're doing all of those things so we can suspend some judgment, we can be respectful of each other and our perspectives, and really engage in this open conversation.
So we'd really like to begin today's workshop with an internal check, because these conversations really begin with ourselves internally. And so we'd like to ask everyone to kind of put down anything in your hands. Just adjust your body in your seat so that you're comfortable and kind of grounded, so feet on the floor if possible. Back straight but not rigid or stiff. And whenever you're ready, you can either close your eyes all the way or just let your gaze fall softly on the floor, whatever is most comfortable for you. And just taking a moment to just breathe and noticing all the qualities or characteristics of your breath. Does it move fast or slow? Does it feel deep or shallow or somewhere in between? Just noticing the rhythm and the sound and the feeling of your breath moving through your body. And now just expanding our awareness to our bodies, our thoughts, our feelings. What do you notice? What do you observe about your thoughts coming into this workshop today? What do you notice about the way you're feeling? Just taking a few moments to observe whatever comes up for you around having these kinds of conversations with students, with colleagues. And now whenever you're ready, you can start wiggling your fingers and toes, bringing your awareness back to the room, opening your eyes. So now that we've done our internal check, we're really ready to start having these conversations together. And so we'd like to ask everyone to stand up and find a partner in the room, someone that you don't know. Okay. Is there anyone who doesn't have a partner? I don't know if we have an odd number or not. Okay. It looks like everyone has a partner. Yeah. So what we'd like to do is give you about 5 or 6 minutes to talk with your partner about this question. So knowing what came up for you in your internal check, knowing what this workshop is about, how do you feel engaging in this conversation about multiculturalism and diversity? So just taking about 5 or 6 minutes to talk with your partner and making sure you switch about halfway through so each person gets a chance to talk. And I'll kind of alert us when we're halfway through.
Okay, if I can get your attention again. Seems like the conversation. Mic check 1, 2. Hi. Thank you, everyone, for engaging. It seems like a lot of good conversation was sparked, and I just wanted to thank you all for engaging, and we will get back to talking about what came up for you, and I also want you to continue to internally check as we go through this presentation, and just notice how you're feeling, notice your body reacting as we continue to have this dialogue with each other. So just wanting to just kind of state that a lot of feelings can come up when we have conversations about diversity and multiculturalism. Some people are excited about it, some people feel fear, there may be some sense of nausea about it, some apprehension, and all of these are normal experiences to have. It is based on whether we've had certain experiences or conversations before, how did they go, did we not have any and we're feeling a little bit nervous or hesitant about it, and those are all typical experiences and great, and it's just, we want you to be your authentic self, and we want you to come into these conversations being you. And to kind of exemplify that, we have this quote here: "Our deepest calling is to grow into our own authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who we ought to be. As we do so, we will not only find the joy that every human being seeks, we will also find our path of authentic service in the world." So just kind of stay with that and stay with whatever it is that came up for you as you were reflecting and having a conversation with your partner. The great thing about this is that as professionals working in student affairs, you have the core skills you already need to engage in these conversations of diversity and multiculturalism. You're already doing what you need to do to continue these conversations with the students you work with. So some of the core skills that you already have are consulting, using yourself as an example, empathizing with students, leading dialogues and discussions, building relationships, and your own lived experiences, the things you yourself have gone through.
So the end, we're done. No, now that we've initiated the conversation, now that we recognize that you have these core skills, or you've probably been already doing this, we want to go deeper, right? So we want to deepen our understanding of what these conversations look like, maybe what our barriers are, what we are uncomfortable with. So that's where we're going to go right now. So we're going to ask you to stay in your pair, but then find another pair, okay? So find a group of 4 people. So go ahead and do that. So as you get into your groups of 4, we want you to think about this question. What are some barriers to exploring aspects of multiculturalism and diversity in our work with our students? So what are some barriers that you face in working in addressing multiculturalism and diversity with our students? Okay, we're going to ask everyone to wrap up. So thank you, everyone, for engaging. We noticed that the energy level with this question was a little bit different. And so we want to know, what came up for the group? Or what were some of the things that may have come up? Yes. Language. You want to say more about that? Maybe it's hard to find the language to talk about stuff? Okay. Okay. So understanding what people are saying, right? And language barriers, period. Okay. What are other things that may have come up?
Prejudging or stereotypes.
Okay, so stereotypes, judgments. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Not necessarily always having enough time to have a conversation and a worthwhile conversation.
So not having enough time, maybe not even having enough energy or resources to continue to have these conversations. Yes.
So for me, one of the things I talked about was how, so as I identify as a queer person of color, and I am the only queer person of color where I work, the only queer person and the only person of color. And so how, for me, every day is like a lot of my day in work goes in like self-care, like a lot more than I think is visible to people sometimes. And that's fine. I don't want it to be super visible. But how that can be a barrier in supporting and having these conversations with students, because I have to be there for them, and I love it. It's my passion. And at the same time, I'm like internally taking care of myself because it's an everyday process. So that can be a barrier for me.
Thank you.
One of the things we discussed is noticing a culturally offensive phrase on a department's webpage, and realizing that there are, students and families that come from certain backgrounds that will see it and be very offended by it, and yet not being in a position to, in terms of the power structure of the university, to bring attention to it and to request it be changed. And so that can impact students that are here and also prospective students.
Things don't always feel very inviting.
Another barrier we discussed is the fear of saying something that may inadvertently offend someone, or even if it was a term that maybe in previous years you were told was the appropriate thing to say, but that's changed and maybe you're not up to date on that, or asking a question that has a different connotation than you intended. So I think sometimes our own fear of not being able to communicate what we're trying to find out gets in the way.
No, absolutely. We don't want to be wrong or be judged about that. Other things? Coming.
So we talk about just kind of one of the barriers could be attending to the different identities that students bring. So talking about multiculturalism, but also kind of how to incorporate those discussions and dialogues with students of understanding that we identify in different ways and addressing to all of that, and just kind of how that could be difficult if feeling like you have to attend to all those the intersection of different identities, but also at the same time having the space to talk about it with students and feeling comfortable.
Thank you. Yes.
We also talked about resistance to even engaging in the conversation, and another component of that is due to past hurts and how to engage with not only students but ourselves in conversations that not only can be really difficult but also painful. And how do you work with that and turn it into a healing process and make that into a productive conversation? And what can that look like, and what does that mean? Because what I've also heard is that it's a tiring process. And so how do you turn that into self-care, and how do you make that, use the energy to really make that conversation move forward rather than kind of get into the cyclical cycle of just being really tired all the time?
Thank you, everybody. I think it's so important to continue to engage in these conversations and check ourselves and be aware of what's been coming up for us, how to take care of ourselves so that we don't get stuck. This is a list of some of the barriers that we came up with, and I'm going to move kind of fast through that just for the sake of time to just go on to the next slide. Because I think that we came up with an exhaustive list, and I think that it's really hard to do this work. But this is why we wanted to create a space with our colleagues so that we can have this conversation in the first place, because these are the people that we're going to turn to first. So when we think about going and addressing barriers, which is what we're going to do next, I want to take a moment to validate that what everybody said is a struggle. What everybody said is something that we probably all experience at one point or another. And that no matter how much experience we have in doing this work, that there is a lot of discomfort around it. So everyone struggles with these conversations at different points, and then there's no perfect way to approach these kind of conversations or conflict. But we're gonna try. We're gonna try working on it.
Okay, so I just wanted to take us on a little side of just a little anecdote that happened to me. I was working a powwow event that we have yearly here at UC Davis, and I was at one of the booths, and a lady, a European middle-aged and then some woman approached me, and she said, "What is LGBTQRIA?" And since I identify as queer and person of color, and I also was next to someone who identified similarly, I just took a breath and I reminded myself, now this is a teaching moment. And so I said, well, you know, gay, lesbian, you know, I went through the whole alphabet. And then she looked at me and took a nice deep breath. Well, I just don't like it when I don't understand something. I go, oh, that's wonderful. I always like it if I can share something that you don't understand. So thank you for the moment. And she went away satisfied, and I went away remembering my policy of stop, breathe, you know, don't make a judgment right away. She wasn't out to persecute me, just educate herself. So that was a good one. So, we also want to start thinking about what are the benefits of talking about diversity and multiculturalism. I hope maybe this will be a little easier on the soul. And what are the potential ramifications of not having these conversations? And we can just look at the news every night to understand the ramifications. But yeah. Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Be my pleasure. Okay. So, in terms of benefits about diversity and multiculturalism and talking about these things, students feel understood. It's hard to believe, but this is really an important thing to sort of name some things that are their experience every day. It's an invitation to put words to difficult experiences the student may have. It increases retention rates of underserved students. Increased emotional and physical health, allows all aspects of a student to be brought into the room, creating safety, I might add. Potential ramifications of not having these conversations might be student feels alone, isolated, and without a community. I think someone mentioned that that sounded familiar. Okay. And decreases academic motivation, increases stress levels, just feeling as though you're the other always, depression, anxiety. This might be a point when they might interact with counseling services, and also potentially re-traumatizing, them by feeling unheard or unrecognized, unappreciated, and also not in the right place. So what are some of the things we could do to address barriers in engaging with difficult dialogues is probably what we'd like you to discuss next. So why don't we get together as a big group? Right, we're not going, okay, as a big group and discuss a little bit more. Thank you. Oh. Are we still discussing? Am I discussing as well? Oh, the whole group. So if you just get back wherever you want to be, or if you want to be in the pods that you created, the little families that you created, that's fine. And how long are we taking? Okay.
In these conversations, what are some of the ideas and strategies you've put to use that have been successful in having these conversations? What works?
I was just noticing right now that I was wishing that we had like a topic to kind of center the conversation around, because that can be helpful if you're worried about like what to say, like having like a topic. So I noticed myself going like, we need a topic because that will make it easier. So maybe something like that, having like a topic that you talk about, or several topics, or like a way to choose different topics or something like that. I just mean in general, that can be something to help people maybe.
To help contain the conversation.
One of the things I try to do, because if you walk into my office, you'll notice that there's piles everywhere, lots of papers. It feels like there's always too much going on. So when I am in a discussion with a student, I try to have the conversation at a table where there's nothing else. My iPhone isn't there, my iPad isn't there. It's just me and that student and whatever the issue is, and put all the rest of it behind me and away from whatever the conversation is we need to have. And if I have paper, it's usually a blank piece of paper with a pen.
So sort of getting rid of all the barriers, the physical barriers in between you and the student, so that the emotional connection can occur. Yeah. I know student affairs professionals have more ideas than this.
Yeah, I would say create a safe environment, maybe have some ground rules so that folks feel safe in discussing multiculturalism and diversity.
So creating that brave, safe space for students to talk. One of the things we've done today is kind of tried to build a container that starts slow and builds depth over time. So starting with, sort of our own internal check, moving to just talking to one person, moving to talking to 4, and then larger groups. And so that's a way that we can also build the container of building some depth in these conversations as well, and also keeping the safety as we build depth. And I think we have to, one more, yes.
So speaking as a student, I think it's helpful when staff and other folks on campus are visible about their support for like diverse backgrounds. So it just opens up the conversation to be a little bit easier.
So when we share about ourselves too, yeah, and use appropriate self-disclosure, yeah. So I think in the interest of time, we're going to move on.
So we did come up with a list of strategies as well. So the first thing we wanted to highlight is consulting with colleagues that have similar privileges that you'd have in terms of your identities. And that's part of what we wanted to do today is making sure that you're starting to consult with the people that you work with. Two is challenging assumptions that you might hold, assumptions, biases, stereotypes, things that come up for you. We want you to be active in challenging these. Explore areas of blind spots as privilege spots. So where do your privileges come up? What do you not recognize? What do you not see? What are the blind spots? Try to recognize those, and hopefully they're happening with conversations. Hopefully they're happening with when you're getting feedback from your students, et cetera. Be open to the process of learning. And it seems like everybody here is open to the process of learning, so that's good. Be patient with yourself and with others. I know that there's a lot of fear around judgment, around being wrong, but be patient with yourself because you have the strengths, you have the skills to be able to do this. Build some mutual empathy. So share with your students what you're going through. It's not, we spend a lot of our times engaging with our students, listening to them, building empathy for them, showing them that we care and we support them. Sometimes it's okay to have them do it for us. Let them know, I'm stressed right now. Let them know, maybe I'm struggling a little bit. And allow them to have some empathy for who you are and what you're going through. Engage in perspective taking, so allow more perspectives to come into the picture. Solicit questions, be open, be inquisitive, be curious. Try to reserve judgments that you have. This goes along with biases and assumptions, but reserve judgments that might come up. Try to be open, try to take a mindful moment before you're going into a hard conversation so that maybe that can happen. Consider discomfort as a sign of growth. I often think about doubt as being such an important part of learning, and so when I'm feeling doubt about what I'm about to do, or when I'm feeling some discomfort, I know that a big learning moment is about to happen, and that's good. That's good. We need those moments to be able to grow. Where am I? Oh yeah, increase skills with trainings. So this is probably why we're having this conference in the first place, but hopefully you're attending more conferences. There's lots of resources across campus, and we can email you a list of resources towards the end. So increase skills with trainings, conversations, and exposure. And increase your knowledge with books, with scholarly articles, biographies, films, museums. Learn about people's stories, learn about cultures, just learn, period. And learn where our students are coming from and what's going on with them. Are there other strategies people would want to add? I know we covered a few. Yes? If you do make that inadvertent gaffe where you offend someone, own it. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. I think that's a great one. It's okay to say I don't know. It's okay. It's absolutely invited to say I'm sorry and make amends. And don't just shut it down, right? We want to keep that conversation going with our students. Yes. Mm-hmm. So providing folks with that opportunity to reflect or just verbally get it out so they can talk through their thoughts and being flexible enough with that and being open about that. Right. You're going to lead this process, and let's honor what you need, and then also knowing what I need in order to get through the conversation. Absolutely. Yeah, people participate differently, and to be patient with that. Absolutely. Other strategies? Avoid asking why. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, because why is a word that puts me on the defense, like I need to defend what I did instead of explain. So I try to create a space where they can explain instead of defend.
That's great. We want to be curious about our students, have them explain. Okay, we're gonna move on.
So this last piece, maybe it's for time constraints, maybe it's something to hold on to as you move through your day today, and just reflecting on this experience that we've all had here. What was it like to engage in this process? What was it like to have these conversations with people that you may not have had experience with before? And to just kind of hold that and think about it as you move through your day. And also,
I would add one thing. What's one thing you want to do to take this forward from here?
Thank you. Yes, how can you incorporate this into your position here in student affairs and your work with students, and maybe even your own life? And also just knowing that the methodology we use today is something that can be used with your own students, whether it be within groups, in the classroom, in workshops. You can build this conversation literally by starting in small, intimate spaces where it is more safe and comfortable, and then bringing it into a bigger group discussion where we can all share and learn from each other. And lastly, just thank you for joining our presentation here today and for engaging. You all were amazing. We have a few minutes, I believe, for some questions or comments, so I'm going to open the floor to you all.
So for each of you, I'd be curious, what is one resource, like maybe a favorite book or article or, something that you have used in your own professional career relating to this topic that you'd recommend?
So for each of us, what's one book or article, some type of resource that we would?
Well, maybe somebody can help me out in this respect. I'm terrible at names, but Dr. Sue, Dr. Daryl Wing Sue is a psychologist, counseling psychologist that works a lot and has brought up an ongoing conversation about microaggressions, if people are familiar with those terms. You can look him up on YouTube. He has several small clips, videos that talk about what especially is a microaggression, what it looks like, even a little bit about how it interplays in academics in terms of students. It can be a really slight thing like, you meant to say a compliment and you reach out to an international student, say, well, you speak really good English, what you thought was an international student, which is just a student who was raised in Jersey. So that's the thing is. But anyway, he's got 2 books out on the topic, so you might want to take a look at that.
If you've never read anything by Bell Hooks, all of her books are wonderful and really inspirational and also accessible and practical. And she has a trilogy. One book is called Teaching Community. Another book is called Teaching to Transgress. And so it's about working with students in communities like you work with students on campus and how to help students sort of have that transformational experience like Jan Gong was talking about this morning. So I recommend any of her books, but in particular those 2 I think would be really relevant to what we talked about today.
So noticing that we're out of time and we do want to acknowledge your question as an important one, what we are going to do is send out our presentation today, and included in the presentation will also include links to resources, either articles, books, or places on campus, resources on campus to work with ourselves and students, so you can have that with you. And maybe, are there any other questions or comments before we wrap up for today? Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.